On August the 31st of this year, one of the most celebrated public service careers in Southwest Florida will officially come to an end with the retirement of Circuit Court Judge Lee Haworth. For the past 26 years, Judge Haworth has been a major force in Florida's legal system and a fierce advocate for children's rights and for the rights of all those who come to our legal system seeking justice. Now he's stepping down, and we thought it was a good idea to look back on a lifetime of service. It is my profound honor to have Judge Haworth here to talk about his extraordinary life and judicial career. Welcome, Judge Haworth.
Thank you, Durand. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
If I had your permission, could I read part of the letter that you sent to Governor Scott announcing your retirement?
Go ahead.
Dear Governor Scott, Article 5 of the Florida Constitution requires me to vacate my office as a circuit judge at the end of August 2015. My last day as an active member of the judiciary will be August the 31st, 2015. This will complete 26 years of judicial service. I depart reluctantly, as I would willingly continue to serve many more years. I am hopeful the Constitution will be amended in future years to allow for the extended service of seasoned judges. It has been an honor to serve the citizens of Sarasota, Manatee, and DeSoto counties for over 2.5 decades. I leave with high regard for my colleagues on the bench and secure in the knowledge that this vibrant but small third branch of government remains steadfastly independent and devoutly respectful of the rule of law. It seems clear that if it weren't for the mandate in the Florida Constitution, you would have many years more that you would like to serve as a circuit court judge.
You know, Durand, it's funny because when I started this career in 1989, I didn't realize it would come so fast. And of course, I knew Article 5 had that provision in it. But you know, I think when the Constitution initially got that provision, 70 looked like a long way, you know, and you were an old man at age 70. I think nowadays, I always say age 70 is the new 50. And I think that if you're in good health, as I am, and you enjoy what you're doing, if you love your job, it's not really work. And I'm not looking forward, I made no secret of it. I do not like the idea of retirement. I enjoy what I do, and being forced not to do what you enjoy doing is not a pleasant prospect. On the other hand, it is the law, and I guess as a judge I'm supposed to obey it, and I will. And it does make room for a new, fresh perspective from some young lawyer, and he or she will take over my position hopefully in the next month or two. I'll have a chance to mentor that individual and help break them in. And I'll come back probably as a senior judge and do specialized work at the request of the chief judge.
Well, those who know you, Judge Haworth, understand that in many ways you're just hitting your stride. Is there a better job in the world than being a circuit court trial judge?
You know, I don't think so. One time I was being urged to put my name in rather for the appellate court. But, you know, if you enjoy seeing people and you like the interplay that you see in a trial court setting, it's very different process altogether to come in every day and see a stack of papers or be reading a bunch of briefs. I enjoy the drama and the education that I get on human behavior every day in the courthouse. And I always say I'm never going to be surprised again, and every time I say that I am. There's just such complexity to what human beings are up to, and good things and bad things, that there's never a source of amusement and curiosity about why we are the way we are.
And it is that human equation that sets trial court judges apart from appellate judges.
I think so. I think seeing and being on the front line of a vigorous trial when you have good lawyers presenting good issues, to me is, you know, I always said when I die and go to heaven, I want to be there on the bench and have good lawyers trying a case. Because that to me is the epitome of what we do in the judiciary and the pleasure that I've gotten out of it the last 26 years.
Well, let's go back to where it all began. Let's talk about your your early years growing up in Sarasota, Florida. You are from Sarasota.
Born and raised, and my parents moved here from Tennessee in the 40s. My mother was a teacher at Sarasota High School. She was also a musician. She played for many years in second violin section of the West Coast Symphony. My father was a dentist. I think when he moved here, he was either the second or third dentist in town. And of course, things changed radically after that. But I kind of had a Mayberry sort of childhood, one that has disappeared, of course. But people of my generation can empathize and remember the times that you didn't have to worry about locking your door and crime in the street, and you basically felt safe in your hometown. And it was a great place to live and grow up, fishing and hunting and doing the things that people did. I remember on, like Wednesday afternoons, stores would shut down, banks would close, people would go out to the beach, they'd go fishing or doing fun things with their family, and it wasn't quite the rat race that we have today. And it had many, many good values about it.
You even played musical instruments in elementary school.
Well, because my mother was a musician and an artist, I learned the color wheel and the scales before I was probably 5 years old. And she always insisted that we play an instrument. And when I went to Southside in elementary, Brookside Junior High in those days, and Sarasota High, and we had almost a full orchestra at Southside. I remember kids playing violin and viola, trying to learn it. Southside was very good at that. And then Brookside, went there, and I played cello in the orchestra there in 7th and 8th grade. And that was quite an experience. And, when I would come home from school, it would be, you practice an hour either on the piano and later on with the cello. You did your homework, then you got to go out and play. And so you may not get out till 6 or 7 at night, but you could play in the neighborhood. We'd play till 9 o'clock at night in moonlight. It was that kind of neighborhood and that kind of life.
Growing up in Sarasota in those days, did it ever cross your mind that someday you might be one of the most celebrated trial judges in the history of the state of Florida?
Well, I think that's a little over the top, Duran, but I didn't really have a career in mind in the law until I was in college. I really thought I'd follow my father's footsteps as a dentist, and I followed that dream until I hit organic chemistry in college and decided maybe there was a different career for me.
Speaking of college, you left the state of Florida to go to college.
I did. I can say that both of my parents were very strong supporters of the University of Tennessee Volunteers, and I often say I didn't know there was any other college to go to except the University of Tennessee, although my father also spent time at the University of Florida. But he did dental school in Memphis and undergraduate there, as my mother did. So it was a good choice for me. They were very hospitable. They took me under their wing, and I had a lot of good times.
You went to the University of Tennessee undergraduate school, and then it was sometime during your undergraduate years there that the idea of possibly pursuing a legal career arose. How did that happen?
I was on a track to be an English professor. I was taking all of the courses. I was really enamored with Elizabethan literature, especially Shakespeare and Christopher Marlowe in that era. And I had a faculty advisor who happened to be emeritus dean of the College of Liberal Arts, and he very perceptively, looking back on it, said that he thought that maybe things in the academia were going to be drying up with grants and things, and he also thought that I had some qualities that he thought would lend itself to the law. I didn't really see that. I enjoyed reading and writing, and I thought I could write pretty well. I always got good grades in that, but it was really his suggestion. I think about it. I did. I come back home, I think it was during Christmas break, and asked my father, and he also said, I think that's a great idea. And so with two people recommending it who I really respected, took the LSAT, got admitted, and graduated from Knoxville College of Law, University of Tennessee in 1970.
Attending law school changes the way you think about things, doesn't it?
It does, and looking back too, I took a lot of courses I didn't think would have any relevance to the practice of law. I enjoyed law school. I think, matter of fact, I stayed so long, my dad said, "Isn't it about time you graduated?" And so I really think that the way that lawyers approach issues, separating your emotions, looking at facts, sometimes very analytically you have to be, and you have to set aside certain biases that you know you may have in your life to be fair and impartial in a situation that is demanding maybe you look at it differently. I think those are skills that you pick up in law school. And even if you don't practice law, Duran, I think it's a valuable experience because it does train your brain to work in a certain rational way. And that's very helpful in today's world, to be able to think rationally and make decisions on evidence, not on emotion.
After you graduated from law school, you decided to come back to Sarasota.
I did. I never thought about practicing law anyplace else except Sarasota, because I love this place. I tell you, we are very fortunate to live in paradise here, and I've raised children here, and I have 9 grandchildren, and I wouldn't really want to live someplace else. We're very fortunate in what we have in the culture, the arts, the music, theater. I never crossed my mind to go elsewhere. So I did. I came back. In those days, you could hang out your shingle, as they said, and I practiced for a short time with a lawyer who had a probate practice, was kind enough to refer me cases. I was in the Ellis Bank building, I think they called it in those days. Had an 11th floor office, no clients, but a beautiful view.
At some point, you decided that you might want to pursue maybe a career in public service, so you went to the state attorney's office and became an assistant state attorney. Tell us how that happened.
It was an accident of fate, really. I had a pleading that I needed to file in the courthouse, and I went over there to file it. I needed to get a judge's signature, and I went up to the 3rd floor. I think it was Judge Silvertooth. Got the paper signed, came back down, and as I was in the elevator, there were 2 prosecutors in there talking about a huge arrest that had happened out on Marina Jack Park. There were a bunch of folks out there selling LSD to kids, and they must have made, gosh, I want to say 40 or 50 arrests. And the state attorney's office at that time was pretty small. So I overheard this conversation, and I said, gosh, you think you guys could use some help? And they looked at me and said, absolutely. So I got off the elevator, filed the papers. I said, asked them, how do I go about this? They said, well, the state attorney is down the street there on Main Street. His name's Frank Shaw. Go down there and talk to him. I went straight down there, got an interview, and he hired me that very day.
And you started practicing law as an assistant state attorney.
I did, and it was a thrill. I mean, I enjoyed doing that. I tried a number of cases. Started off a little rocky, as new lawyers would, but then I kind of got the hang of it and had several, I guess you'd call them high-profile cases that resulted in convictions. And the result was that eventually I kind of moved up the chain of command, you might say, and then when there was a change in state attorneys, it went from Frank Shaw to John Blair. He asked me to be the chief prosecutor, which I agreed to do.
You were already establishing yourself as a force in the local legal community. You may not know this, but when I was a young lawyer, because of your reputation in the courtroom, I would on occasion go to court and watch you try a case or argue motions in front of a judge, because you were kind of, even back in those days, a gold standard of how you presented cases and how you conducted yourself in the court.
Duran, I had no idea you were there. If I was, I might have behaved myself better.
Well, I was watching you. You weren't looking for me.
Well, I did not know that, but it's good for you to say that, because you certainly had a very distinguished career on your own. And being a prosecutor is a difficult job. You don't always get cases that people want to see convictions in, and it's a very challenging job, stress-wise, and I think you have to be pretty tough to get through that and do that day in and day out.
You know, it seems to me, as we're talking about this, that one of the things that we may have lost is the ability for young lawyers just starting out to take time off, go into the courtroom, watch experienced lawyers practice their trade, and learn how to do it the right way.
One of the things that I miss, and I think there's good reason why things have changed this way, but we used to have a practice, and this is in the early 70s, when after you tried a case, the judge would say to you and the opposing attorney, hey, would you like for me to critique how you did? And they would bring you into chambers, and of course you didn't have to do it, but you're always interested in their perspective. And I learned a lot from the judges telling me that. Certain things that I had done, they thought could be done better. And they tell the other lawyer something he could have done or she could have done better. And we learned a lot that way. But of course that nowadays would not be accepted because somebody would be complaining they were getting some sort of special insight with the judge. But I will say that was a benefit for me, and I miss having that counsel.
Then after, how many years were you at the state attorney's office?
It was a little over 4 years.
After 4 years, you decided to go back into the private practice of law in Sarasota.
Yes, and I never did pigeonhole myself as a prosecutor. I took advantage of many classes and courses that the Florida Bar put on in the civil area. And I would go to, for example, a real estate seminar, and the lawyers would say, what are you doing here? You're a prosecutor. And I would say, well, I may not always be a prosecutor. So I wanted to be competent in more areas of the law than just criminal law. And so after about 4 years, a member of the bar approached me, asked me if I would want to go into private practice. It was attractive. So I agreed and left the state attorney's office in about 1975 or so, or 6, and started doing general civil practice, litigation for I think it was like a 9-person law firm, heavily invested in real estate and probate. But they had a number of clients that would get involved with litigation matters, and it was an internal referral to me, and that's what I did.
And you were establishing a very successful career in the private practice of law in Sarasota. Your reputation was growing as someone who had great skills and great ethics. Did you feel the tug to go back into public service?
You know, I tried cases in front of a number of different judges, and I thought, you know, having been a prosecutor, I needed to build my skills as a civil trial lawyer. So when the Florida Bar started their specialized board certification process, I was in the first class to get board certified in civil, and I felt I had a good balance. And after about, 12 or 13 years, I would go to bar meetings and other events with friends of mine who were lawyers. I said, Haworth, why don't you think about running for judge? And I thought, well, it had a certain attraction to me because I thought with the balanced background that I had that I could probably do an okay job. And so in 1988, I actually ran, and things turned out pretty well.
So trial lawyers encouraged you to seek a judicial post.
What they told me is that they thought that my background was balanced. In other words, I hadn't just spent all my time in the state attorney's office or all my time doing civil work, but there was a blend of that. And I think it's helpful if you're a litigator knowing that the judge you're appearing before has had experience in a number of areas. And I think that's one of the motivations they had to encourage me to do that.
You became a judge and you assumed the bench in 1989.
January of '89.
And then 2 years into your career as a circuit court judge, something unexpected happened.
Yeah, I was actually out at the National Judicial College in Reno, and the 3-week general jurisdiction course. And on August 2nd, 1990, Iraq invaded Kuwait, and that set into motion a chain of events that led me basically into Kuwait City in a few months after that, a few weeks after that.
Let's talk about how you were in the position to be called to active duty.
Well, the University of Tennessee is a land-grant college, and in those days, ROTC was mandatory for your first 2 years, and then you could elect to go into the senior ROTC program, which I did. And they were kind enough to defer me through law school. When I got out of law school, Vietnam was pretty hot and heavy, and they gave me 90 days to find a reserve unit. And I found one in St. Petersburg. It was called the 199th Judge Advocate General Detachment International Law Team. Now, international law is really a euphemism because what we did was teach the law of war, the Geneva Conventions, to troops. And we would learn all about what were proper targets, about rules of engagement, what not to do with prisoners and how to treat prisoners of war and those sort of things. So I basically had been doing that for 20 years, never thinking that there was you always prepare for mobilization, but you don't think it's going to happen. And then, sure enough, in January of 1991 is when it all hit, as I say, the balloon went up, and we got our notice to move out from our detachment in St. Petersburg to Fort Meade, Maryland, where we started preparing, I thought, to backfill, meaning that I thought we were going to go in with our team and replace the active duty JAG officers who were going to go overseas into Kuwait. But we found out, much to our surprise, that they were actually targeting us to do that work over there. So it was a unique assignment because the mission that we had was to prepare charges and to identify the Iraqi Republican Guard that had been accused of all sorts of atrocities against the Kuwaiti civilians. And so our team was augmented by Kuwaiti volunteers. We were assigned folks from the Navy and the Marines, and together my job was to set up the operations, which I did in Riyadh, Dhahran, and Kuwait City. So we followed the troops into Kuwait City. We were there shortly after and while they were liberating. And then we did our investigation, and then suddenly the mission changed. For political reasons, decision was made not to prosecute the people that we had identified, but rather to repatriate them through Saudi Arabia. And then our mission was changed from basically a prosecutorial investigative into documentation of the atrocities. And then at the end of that, the war, which as you know was pretty short, I came back to Washington, D.C. and worked on edited the war crimes report for the Department of Defense and the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
You actually spent a little bit of time in the Pentagon, didn't you?
Yeah, it was well named as a puzzle palace. It took me forever to find my way around. It's a huge building. They put us up. They treated us pretty nice. They put me up in embassy suites in Crystal City, and I'd go into the Pentagon and start assembling the materials for the report for the Department of Defense. We had a lot of material to go through. It was a fascinating experience. Not one that I'd like to repeat, but it was one that was certainly in many ways life-changing.
Well, we missed you when you were gone, but then you came back.
I did. Yeah, although I came back to family division, and somebody joked that they thought I'd rather go back to Kuwait than do family, but that was not right. I was glad to do family. But it was quite an experience. We had a good team. We were well prepared for it. Our training had paid off, and I think we acquitted ourselves pretty well for reservists.
When you came back to the 12th Judicial Circuit, Sarasota in particular, you assumed your position on the circuit court bench again, and your first assignment back was family court?
Yes, I'd left family court, and I came back, and they had filled in. I think Gilbert Smith Sr. was the judge that came back and helped with that. And it was very encouraging to see the number of people that were supporting, trying to keep things running smoothly. Everybody pitched in. Legislature ultimately made up the difference between my Army pay and my state pay, which made things smoother financially for us. So yeah, it was really a unique experience, and I'll tell you, my heart goes out to the families who are over there, of the people that are over there now, the men and women that are fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. We had it very easy compared to what they're going through, and so I'm hoping that we'll get many of them come back safe. But we have some projects to try to address their needs too that we've done in the courts.
You continued to work as a circuit court trial judge for a period of time, and then I think it was 2007, you became the chief judge of the 12th Judicial Circuit.
Yes, the policy that we have in our circuit is that chief judges serve 4 years. They're term limited at the end as far as the chief judge role goes. So I got elected in 2007. Things kind of escalated pretty quickly after that.
Tell us in general what a chief judge of a judicial circuit is responsible for. What does a chief judge do?
Well, the Supreme Court sets forth a rule of judicial administration, sets forth a number of things that chief judges are supposed to do. But they're administrative in the sense that they assign judges to division. They have a responsibility to watch jail populations to make sure that people are not languishing in jail, that their cases are being moved, that our judges are doing their job, make sure that their cases are not stacking up, that they're working as hard as they need to keep their cases cleared and people not waiting forever to have their cases resolved. There's also an educational component. We like to educate judges about changes in the law, new rules of procedure that come out. We're very fortunate here to have probably the best court administrator in the state in the form of Walt Smith. And he's very instrumental and critical to making sure everything runs fine. He does basically the personnel side of it. But judges also have a responsibility as chief to interact with the legislative delegation, to present evidence of our needs. If we need a new judge, that we try to convince them to help us with that. And there are certain areas of legislation that we see a need as chief judges that need to be changed, new ways to approach things. And so we have an interaction with the legislative delegation. And many times I was in Tallahassee promoting one bill or another at the request of the Trial Court Budget Commission or other folks that had a similar interest. So that's generally the role of the chief judge. And of course, I think also to represent the face of the judiciary at public events. I made it a practice to attend as many community functions as possible to show that judges are part of the community. We're not in some ivory tower somewhere, and we're actually part of the fabric of our society and interested in seeing things done well and helping people and kids.
And if people have complaints about individual judges, those complaints ultimately hit your desk.
Well, if you have a judge who's become churlish or has been irritable or is accused of, being rude in court, or there's some issue that perhaps they're sitting on an order, it's been 30 days or so, they haven't ruled, the chief judge then would work with that particular judge to see if they could correct any behavior, make them as efficient as possible, make sure they have the resources they need to do the job, and hopefully we won't have those problems reoccur.
It used to be that the chief judge of a circuit was largely a ceremonial position. I'm talking about in the old days, but that's not the case anymore.
Well, it wasn't for me, because several things happened as soon as I got to be chief judge that pretty much kept me pretty busy.
You were hit with two crises just about at the same time.
Yeah, what happened when I took over in 2007, you might recall the Great Recession started to hit pretty hard in 2008. And what happened was the legislature, money was not coming in the way it used to, a lot of it related to real estate filings. And the legislature cut back dramatically on judicial budgets. And we were told, I'm pretty sure it was 2008, that we had to reduce our budget, the 12th Circuit's budget, by X amount of dollars. I think it was $200,000, $300,000. Well, all we have in our circuit as assets are people. We don't have things that we can sell off or do without really easily. We're just heavy in personnel. So the first thing that happened when we hit that wall was that I had to make a list of the people that we were going to have to fire in order to make that budget. We didn't have a choice. Every circuit was given an allocation, And if you didn't hit that, the judicial branch would not be able to pay their bills come July 1st. So there was no question we had to do it. So one of the most challenging things that I had to do, working with the court administrator and also a couple of the more senior judges, we sat around a table and we made the very hard decisions about who needs to go. And it's not because they were bad employees, it was because we simply could not afford them. And that was a hard thing to do. I never mind firing people if they're doing a bad job, but firing them because you don't have the money to pay them was not a happy prospect. And so that was a very uncomfortable thing. It had to be done. You had no choice. And we did what we had to do. But looking back on it, it was a very difficult thing.
Well, I'll tell you this, that I remember those days very well, and there was a great sense of confidence that since you were the chief judge, we all had the feeling that the chief will get us through this. He'll do what's necessary. He'll do what's right. And I want to thank you for having been there at that time.
Well, thank you for that, Duran. You know, it was a confluence of two dramatic things. First, we had the budget cut. And then we got hit with a tsunami of foreclosures. We went from, I think it was 900 cases a year in 2006 or 2007 to 8,000. And we didn't have the resources to handle it. It took the legislature a couple of years to give us a grant to try to whittle it down. We just recently, as a matter of fact, this year, 2015, are finally winding up the grant that we had to help reduce the backlog. So the confluence of those two things made it pretty challenging. Again, I had good support from the court administrator. And I have to say the bar was very helpful too, because I went to them and outreach to the bar to help us, particularly with the foreclosure crisis. We needed lawyers to help, and many of them volunteered many, many hours trying to help people that were floundering because of the number of cases being filed against homesteads in particular.
You had to come up with a strategy to deal with this avalanche of foreclosure cases, and you did, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But have you felt that you've had this special opportunity to serve your community because you have been a circuit court trial judge?
I think that, first off, we have a number of judges in our circuit that would be able to step up in crisis situations and be chief judges. So I was just one of several that had that potential. I think we're very fortunate here to have a good bench of talented people that are very dedicated to working hard and are working as much as they need to help the chief judge and to accomplish the goals that we set for our circuit. And I think my thanks goes out to my colleagues on the bench for all the work that they've done.
I've heard you say that every day you've spent as a trial judge is a day you've looked forward to coming to work.
You know, Duran, I don't think there's many people that can say that they enjoy their work every day. And I'm not going to say there aren't some days that you have some challenging cases where you're making very hard decisions. But for the most part, if you have an employment where you feel satisfied that you've done as good a job as anybody could do, that you've represented the interest of the judiciary in a fair and impartial way, it's very rewarding personally. And I think anybody who's done this job for a number of years has a great respect for the amount of work that is required, but the satisfaction that comes from doing what you think is a good job is very personally satisfying.
By the way, what do judges do when they're at the courthouse but they're not in the courtroom?
Well, I'll tell you what I see mostly is the judges that are trying to stay as current as they can with the law. The legislature passes laws every year. The Supreme Court and the appellate courts are cranking out cases by the dozens. And when you serve in a division, for example, in civil or in criminal law, you have to study pretty darn hard to stay up with the lawyers. Fourth Amendment issues in criminal court, search and seizure issues. If you're in crime, it's issues relating to malpractice or land use. You got to be on your toes. So, and also, I know I spend a lot of time writing orders. I enjoy the writing process. I think a lot of my fellow judges do. And so we're doing research, and also what people don't see behind the scenes, we do a lot of meetings. People want to see judges and talk to them about a lot of different projects, and trying to encourage the judiciary to get involved with different things. And so I do a lot of meetings. I think a lot of our judges look for projects that they want to be contributing to the community, get out there and make a difference beyond just being on the bench calling balls and strikes. So I think it's a pretty full job if you do it right, and I think our judges are pretty good at doing that.
Do judges ever worry about the decisions that they have made?
You know, if you've played baseball, you know that sometimes when you're batting, you feel that solid hit when that ball comes across the plate. You know you hit it out of the stadium. There's other ones that you think you hit it a little soft, you're not really sure, you're just going to wait to see if it's going to get caught. That's kind of the feeling you have, at least I do as a judge, because you make a decision, you hope you're right. Thankfully, we've got somebody in Lakeland or Tampa that's going to tell you if you're wrong, if it's an important matter. But I think that the judges do worry about their cases, hopefully not about any sort of political pressure that comes because of it, because we make decisions all the time that people don't like. And the rule of law means that we follow the law, even though sometimes we may not like it. We have to make decisions that are respectful of the Constitution and the legislature's pronouncements. And sometimes that's a conflict with your personal feelings. But again, that goes back to your law school training where you set that aside. Our job is to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the state. And as I said, some of these laws are not something we would prefer to have passed, but once they pass, unless there's a very profound constitutional issue, we enforce it.
I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about how the judicial system has changed since you started practicing law almost 46 years ago. It used to be almost exclusively an adversarial system that was designed to figure out what the truth may be by having one side argue in favor of an issue, the other side arguing in opposition, and then through that adversarial process, the decision maker would figure it out.
Well, I'll answer that in just a minute, but one of the big changes that I remember and have seen Durand too is on the judicial side. Because you remember when you started practicing, you might go in front of a judge in the morning for a divorce case, have a contract case later in the morning, have a criminal case in the afternoon with the same judge. So the judges have become more specialized. We now have 5 divisions in circuit court where judges basically do that until they rotate to another division. But the biggest change in the practice of law and in the judiciary has been in a proliferation of specialty courts. And it's been based on some pretty good social science that the judiciary can be a player in healing families and making the trauma of litigation less. And so that has been one of the biggest changes that I've seen. And also the emphasis on civility in the courtroom. Notwithstanding what you see on TV with some of the TV shows about lawyers, the Florida bar and our local bar has been very insistent that lawyers be civil to one another, not only in court, but out of court. And we have processes now to get a lawyer's attention if he or she is rude and uncivil. So that's been a change. But I think the idea that courts have a role in society other than just giving decisions and can have what we now call a role in therapeutic justice, which is a big training thing for lawyers and judges, because we didn't learn about therapeutic justice in law school when I went. But there are ways that we can run our courts that can be less traumatic to the litigants, make the process more of a healing nature than an antagonistic one, And I think that's a good change in the way things have operated.
Solving problems in a different way.
Exactly.
A couple of examples of these specialty courts that you're talking about that we've had around for some period of time now are drug court and mental health court. Can you talk about those for just a second? And then I want to get to 4 other initiatives that you've been heavily involved in.
Sure. Well, drug court is an attempt to address the addiction problem that is so prevalent in our society. You know, you get tired as a judge putting people in jail for the same offense on addictions. And so the concept is that they can heal better and perhaps get away from their addiction, get sober. And we, thank goodness, the counties have been very supportive in supporting our drug court. I think it's changed a lot of lives. Mental health court is a little bit more challenging because of the nature of what you're dealing with there. Some of these people have profound mental illnesses, and there's only a limited amount of things you can do to support that. Both of those have been in place in Sarasota County and Manatee for some time, and Judge Owens, our current chief judge, has been very effective in getting the most out of those programs for the people that come into them.
In some ways, what we're talking about is fundamentally changing the way that the court system reacts to the kinds of problems and issues that are brought before it. I want to talk to you about 4 of the very innovative court initiatives that you've personally been involved in and in some ways been responsible for. And those are the Family Safety Alliance, Homestead Conciliation Program, Courts Assisting Veterans, and Early Childhood Court. Let's start with the Family Safety Alliance.
Starting in 2009, 2010, there were a series of articles by what was then the St. Pete Times into problems with the lead agency providing foster care in Sarasota, Manatee, DeSoto, but most particularly in Pinellas County. And there were some problems with supervision of foster children. No need to go in a lot of detail there, but it wasn't a happy situation. And as a result of that, and the news that was coming out about it, myself and several other citizens in Sarasota formed a work group. And it was a pretty good work group. David Bullock, who is the county administrator now in Longboat Key, then he was assistant county administrator for Sarasota. Elliot Metcalf, public defender, Deborah Jacobs, who's with a nonprofit, Stuart Stearns, who was with the Community Foundation, Caroline Zucker with the school board. We all met and decided we needed to make some changes. One of the things that came out of that was something called the Family Safety Alliance. It is a way to protect, it is a mechanism to protect and to make sure that the foster children in our circuit are getting the services that they need. They meet every month or 2. We created a position called a systems advocate, which functions more or less like an ombudsman. She's now employed by the Department of Health in Sarasota. Her name is Laura McIntyre. She works basically to make sure that the Family Safety Alliance meets, keeps minutes, it's public hearings, that they notice. Anybody can come in and listen to it. Here's the things they look for. How many kids are in foster care? How long has a child been moved? How long has an infant been moved from place to place? And we have kids that are 2 years old that have had 6 or 7 placements. That's not good. What's the caseload of the case managers? How many are we overloading the case managers? What is their salary? Is their salary at parity with other people in the state? How many kids are missing? Teenagers take off. Sometimes a child will disappear. We need to know that. And we were able to get the systems advocate to sit in on death review. So when a child dies in foster care, and sometimes it happens, it can be completely without any negligence or anything, we need to know that. The community needs to be invested in that. So they participate in that. It's an outstanding program. Most people don't know about it. They never heard about the Family Safety Alliance, but that is one of the primary reasons that children in this circuit have not suffered any serious injuries or deaths in many, many months, because they're vigilant in making sure that DCF, Department of Children and Families, and the lead agency here is the YMCA of Sarasota, making sure that the children are getting their services and that everything's running on all 4 cylinders, and that's what the FSA does, and we're lucky to have them. They're volunteer community folks from all 3 counties, and bless them for that work, because I sleep a lot better as a dependency juvenile judge knowing they're doing their work.
So in a practical way, it enhances the safety factor in regard to the kids who are somehow in the system.
Well, when we take children away from a family for neglect or abuse, we want to make sure that where they go is safe. And so the Family Safety Alliance is the mechanism by which we monitor that for the community. And I will say that our Department of Children and Families now and the folks at the YMCA are doing a wonderful job. Kurt Stringfellow, who's the head of the Y now, very invested in foster care issues. And the people that work at DCF, Brina Slater, for example, these people want to do the right thing, and now we have community input and oversight, and it's working very well.
Let's talk about the early childhood court.
You know, I have learned so much about this. We also call it the baby court, but they thought it'd be better to call it the early childhood court. Catherine Shea, who's CEO of the Florida Center, really came up with this idea. It's actually a statewide project. The idea is this: if you take away a child from a family at birth, and we do that because maybe the child tested positive for substance, cocaine or oxys or other things at birth, if that child is not properly cared for between 0 and 5, their lives will change radically. And the early childhood court, what it does is it teaches the parents on an accelerated, very intensive program, how do you nurture a child that's 6 months old? What are the benchmarks to look for as that child matures? How do you respond to the child's cues? Because that child's brain is forming at a rapid pace. And if the parents can learn those cues, they can change that child's life dramatically when they get to 5 or 6 years old and they start preschool or kindergarten. We see so many children who are troubled at very early ages, and we can trace a lot of that back to poor nurturing and poor parenting between 0 and 5. This is a program that we've just started in Sarasota County addressing that, and it's, forgive the pun, it's in its infancy, but we're trying to target certain parents who we think would benefit by this specialized intensive training, and hopefully change the life of kids who before this program would be probably looking at a very rough future.
Now these are parents who are already in the court system for one reason or another.
That's right. And for example, they have an observer. First off, they teach the parents how to do these things right, and then they actually observe. They have visitations, extended visitations, and then they'll critique the parent. Well, you didn't do this. The child was reaching out, was trying to communicate with you. Yes, the child's only 8 months old, but the child's trying to communicate. You've got to respond to that. And that is one of the most exciting projects that I've seen, because I think it has it can have a profound effect on the future of these kids. So I'm very pleased with that. I hope it's going to be successful. There's some limited funding for it, and we've got some funding. We got a grant here. I say we, Catherine Shea was able to get it. And so we have a team that works this. I call them into court, see how their cases are going, how progress is going, and believe me, it's going to pay dividends way down the road, and I'm very proud that we're able to start that here in our circuit.
Well, let's talk about a couple of other of these court initiatives that you've personally been involved in, and either creating them or helping them to come online or being an advocate for them. How about the Homestead Conciliation Program?
Well, what happened there, when I was chief, I'd get these calls from lawyers and they'd say, listen, we just got sued on this foreclosure. It's my client's homestead. They can't get through to anybody at the bank. Nobody would answer their phones. Well, they'd answer it, or they put them on permanent hold. And it was like the banks were saying, we don't care whether you're going to lose your home or not. We're going to just force our way and steamroll you. And to me, if a person's facing losing their homestead, and particularly in light of what we saw as a poor quality of paperwork coming in from the banks to support their complaints, we tried to figure a way to break through that wall of silence. And so this idea came to me about setting up what we call a conciliation program that forced every bank who was filing a homestead to actually allow that borrower to talk face-to-face with someone. It's different from mediation. We had no money to pay mediators, but what we could do is force them to talk to the people who are going to lose their homes, because they could have made mistakes on their paperwork. The payments could have been made. There could be alternatives. They might be in a short sale where they could sell their house and still salvage something out of it. There were a variety of options that these borrowers, these people being sued, might have. But if nobody answers the phone at the other end, there was an arrogance about it that I really felt was troubling. So we passed, I did this administrative order that says if you file a homestead in this circuit, you're going to talk to that homeowner if it's a homestead, if they want to talk to you, and most of them did. And then fortunately for us, that conciliation program got supplanted when the Supreme Court entered its emergency motion, I think it was in end of 2009, for managed mediation. And then we started a managed mediation program where we charged the lenders $350 or something, made them pay for the mediation, and resolved cases that would otherwise have been lost by the homeowners. And it worked out, I think it worked out about as well as it could be.
I was going to ask you, what do you think the practical consequences of this conciliation program have been?
I think it saved a number of homes. It also let the banks know that they weren't God, that they made mistakes, and that they're not going to steamroll people in our community. They're going to talk to them before they can go forward and process their foreclosure as a minimum. And I think we got their attention very quick. They weren't happy about that because they were used to just treating borrowers like non-entities. And you know, people would, I'd have lawyers say I would call and be on hold for 2 hours. That's not right. And so we did what we could to change that. And I think we definitely got their attention.
Let's talk about courts assisting veterans.
Courts assisting veterans came about, of course, as I am a veteran, and I began to see when Obama came in that there was this talk about drawdowns and pulling people out of Iraq and Afghanistan. And I began to be concerned that we would have an influx of people coming back with serious mental illnesses, PTSD. We would see people coming into the criminal justice system that had perhaps drug problems or other anger issues arising from their service. And so it was wonderful. The Community Foundation of Venice, I guess Gulf Coast Community Foundation now, gave us a grant, allowed us to start it. And we later went to both Manatee and Sarasota County Commissions. They wonderfully stepped up to help continue the funding for this. Basically, the way it works is this. A guy gets arrested, and when they come to the jail, they interview him, say, "Are you a veteran?" He says he's a veteran. He doesn't make his bail. He goes in front of a judge. The judge sees that he's a veteran on the paperwork he has in front of him. And the judge can now assign that person or recommend that he or she contact the Veterans Court coordinator, a fellow named Greg Para, and then he would see if they want any services. The VA system is hard to negotiate if you're just, it's really can be mystifying. A lot of the vets did not know all the services that they would qualify for. So we screen them on a daily basis whenever they get arrested and try to get them into services if they want them. We can't always force it. We put them on probation, we can force it. But between arrest and probation, which can take months, we can offer them the services of the VA, which can do mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence, all sort array of services available to these veterans when they come in. So that program we started, I think it was pretty early, it was like 2009 or 2010. We've had that here in the circuit.
You're very passionate about these initiatives you've been involved with.
Well, having come through the Vietnam era, we know how veterans were treated then, because I know, Duran, you were in college and probably around when that happened. It was not a happy prospect. These people came and they fought for their country and came back and were treated miserably in many instances. We ignored their problems. And I sure as heck did not want that happening to our young men and women coming back from the wars overseas here. And it got a lot of support. Community stepped up and helped a lot. It's still ongoing, and I think Ed Brodsky, the state attorney, is wanting to put in place a true veterans court, and we're working, I understand, with court administration to make that happen.
One of the things that these innovative programs or court alternatives have in common is they seem to be designed to catch people or problems that otherwise might fall through the cracks in the system.
Absolutely. The whole idea of the court system trying to do something other than just decide cases, but to try to address the needs of the families is one of the big changes in the 21st century judiciary. And I'm very hopeful that we can sustain these programs. Some of them require funding, and we're not always fortunate enough to get funding. The ones we've got, I think, can be maintained for a while at least, but I'm hopeful that we can make some major changes in family life. For example, one of the programs we got recently was a guardian ad litem program for family cases. You know, we have a guardian ad litem program in dependency, where we have a state bureaucracy that provides guardians for dependent children. Well, this was a program that we initiated here to have lawyers appointed to act in high conflict family cases as a guardian ad litem. How many times as a judge do you have people coming in saying, well, she's an addict, he's an addict, he beats her, etc. You have no independent eyes and ears looking at this family. That's what the guardians do, and that's what the lawyers have volunteered to do in our circuit, is to volunteer their time to serve as guardians ad litem in these high conflict cases, report to the court what they've seen. Judge can accept it or reject it, but it makes their decisions much more valuable and evidence-based than just letting the two lawyers or the two parties accuse each other of things. So that's also a project that we've got that I think is going to pay dividends in the way of trying to heal families in the future and help the kids.
What makes a good trial judge?
I think you have to have a combination of a lot of patience. You have to be willing to stay current, to keep your mind intellectually engaged, and you have to have an understanding of human nature. You have to look at this, why people act the way they do. And sometimes you ask yourself, you're not sure that human beings are the most intelligent life forms on the planet, what we see in court. But I think the ability to make a call that's not influenced by anything other than the facts and the law, to be subservient to the Constitution and the laws of the state, carry out the intent of the legislature, and make sure that your decisions are grounded solidly and whenever you can with compassion. But we don't always have that luxury. Sometimes you got to throw people out of a house that they've been, delinquent on their mortgage for 11 or 12 months, and it's going to be tough on them, but the law is the law. You got to do what the law requires, even though you may feel bad doing it. But I think that having insight into human nature is a very valuable commodity for trial judges.
I know you have a favorite quote from Thomas Jefferson.
Well, it's one that I use at the end of jury trials. We really appreciate the service that our community gives us in the way of providing jurors. And so I have kind of a thing that I say to jurors after they completed and rendered a verdict. And it means a lot to me, because one of the strengths of our jurisprudence is having people from the community come forward and decide things like guilt or issues in front of a judge and a panel of sensible people. It's not perfect, it makes mistakes, but Thomas Jefferson said that the jury is the only anchor yet imagined by man by which a government can be held to the principles of its Constitution. Meaning that Jefferson, who of course loved the idea of democracy with a little d, saw the value of bringing people in from the community to make these big decisions, not entrusting it to judges, not entrusting it to a panel of experts, but to the common sense of ordinary Americans. And it does make mistakes. It's not perfect like any human institution, but it's the best we've got. It's the best anybody has ever developed. And as a judge, for those of you that have been jurors, thank you for your service, because it meant a lot to us.
What does the future hold for Lee Haworth?
Well, with 9 grandchildren, I hope to stay active with them. I do plan on coming back and serving as a senior judge. It's kind of like being a utility outfielder. They bring you in and assign you different cases. It could be a county judge, it could be a circuit judge position. When judges go to conferences, they get sick, they call us up, and I'm going to look forward to doing that. And I'll find some other things to stay active. I'm not sure I'll get in the movie business, Duran, but I will find some things that will keep me busy, intellectually challenged, hopefully give me purpose and give me peace. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, we wish you the best in whatever it is you choose to do. I want to thank you for giving me the peace of mind of knowing that a man like you was in charge of our little part of the judicial system in good times and in bad. So, good luck to you.
Thank you, Duran.
My friend.
And good service for what you did. You were, my mentor in many areas too. So thank you for that.
Thank you. 1 hour is hardly enough time to touch the surface of Judge Haworth's life and career. It is hard to estimate what Judge Haworth's work and dedication to service has meant to the legal system of Florida and to the civic fabric of our local community. He has accomplished what any man or woman would hope for in a full and meaningful life. He has left a better place wherever he has been. Thank you for watching.